Saint Stephen was the first martyr in the church and was certainly recognized as a saint in heaven. In the early days of the church, the only people that were considered saints in heaven after they died were those that were martyred, because they felt that they were so much in conformity with the way that Jesus died. So by offering them their lives and even shedding their blood for the faith, they were considered to be so much like Christ that they had to be saints in heaven. After the persecutions of the church ended, after the 3rd century or so, the church started to take a closer look at sanctity and began to see that sanctity came not only from martyrdom, which it certainly did, but from some very wonderful and good people who lived lives very much like Jesus. And the church began then to recognize them as official saints in heaven. And so today we have thousands of people who are canonized saints who were not martyrs in the church, but who live lives very much like Jesus. We see in St. Vincent de Paul, for example, we see the love of Jesus for the poor and for children and for those who are orphaned and in need. In St. Teresa, the Little Flower, we see simplicity, that Jesus was very humble, and we see her simplicity and her simple love for God as being sanctifying. We see in St. Pius X, who lowered the age from 12 to 7 for First Communion for children, Jesus' love for children, which he showed so often in the gospel. And we can see in so many of the saints particular attributes of Jesus. And hopefully in our own lives, we see attributes of Jesus, the way that we do things. And we need not try to figure it out which particular charism Jesus wants us to do. If we do the right thing that's in front of us, that's the day-to-day sanctification that we experience. When we can be charitable to someone today, when we can be patient with someone today, when we can give to somebody who's poor and in need today. In the gospel, Jesus had compassion on the people because they were physically hungry, and he multiplied the bread and the fish. We read that the other day. And now the people wanted to follow him and make him the king because he could give them this food all the time. And Jesus just went to the other side of the lake and got away from them all because he was trying to let them know that that's not why he came into the world. It was a sign of his power over bread, but it was not the end for which he came, to give us physical food. And then he says the work that he wants us to give us is spiritual food that endures for eternal life, he says in the gospel. And that's this food that we receive in the Eucharist today, the body and blood of Christ that gives us food for eternal life and strength for eternal life. So we're very fortunate today not only to have breakfast at Bob Evans, but we're fortunate even more so to have breakfast here at the Lord's table where he gives his body and blood. Let us stand and offer our prayers and petitions.